Scientists who just returned from the country's 32nd Antarctic expedition said they have discovered the biggest canyon on Earth during polar research.
Have you ever wondered why the most resource-rich continent on Earth remains virtually untouched? Why nations that can't agree on anything suddenly came together to lock away an entire landmass? What you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about Antarctica. This is not about climate change. This is not about protecting penguins. This is about something far more terrifying, something that forced the world's most powerful nations to bury the truth beneath 3 kilometers of ice. And that truth is finally breaking through. The gravity anomaly that should not exist. Let me take you back to 2006. 400 kilometers above Earth, 2 NASA satellites named Tom and Jerry begin their silent orbit. Their mission? The Gravity Recovery and Climate Experiment. GRACE for short. But these aren't your typical observation satellites. They don't take pictures. They can't see. So what do? They weigh the Earth itself. Here's how it works. These twin satellites fly in perfect formation, exactly 220 kilometers apart, measuring the microscopic changes in distance between them. When the lead satellite passes over something dense, a mountain, an underground metal deposit, anything with significant mass, gravity pulls it slightly forward. It accelerates. The distance between the satellites changes by mere micrometers, and the instruments record everything. For months, the data comes back exactly as expected. Mountains show up as heavy. Ocean trenches register as light. The gravitational map of Earth makes perfect sense. Predictable, logical, unremarkable. Then Tom and Jerry pass over East Antarctica, over a desolate region called Wilkes Land, and the instruments go haywire. The engineers at NASA's Houston Control Center stare at their screens in disbelief. They run the calculations again, and again, and again. The numbers don't change. They can't change. The satellites don't lie. Beneath 3 kilometers of solid ice, in what should be absolute emptiness, the satellites detect something massive. Something that shouldn't be there. A mascon. A massive concentration of mass. But here's where it gets truly disturbing. This isn't just heavy. The anomaly stretches 320 kilometers in diameter. Think about that for a moment. That's larger than the entire state of Massachusetts. And at its center lies an even denser core, perfectly circular, nearly 50 kilometers across. Perfectly circular. Nature doesn't do perfect circles. NASA scientists scramble for an explanation. They need one that makes sense, that fits into our understanding of planetary geology, that won't cause mass panic. And they find it, or at least they think they do. An impact crater, a meteor strike. Not just any meteor, an asteroid twice the size of the one that wiped out the dinosaurs. They calculate it must have hit Earth 250 million years ago, during the Permian-Triassic extinction event, the Great Dying, the worst mass extinction in Earth's history, when 96% of all marine species simply vanished. Case closed, right? Ancient cosmic disaster. Nothing to see here. But wait. GRACE doesn't show shape. GRACE shows mass. Dense, concentrated metallic mass. What if this isn't the scar left by an impact? What if it's the object itself? What if, 250 million years ago, something enormous, something metallic, something utterly alien didn't just strike Earth, but pierced through the crust like a bullet through flesh and stayed there, buried, waiting, hidden beneath the ice for eons? You might think this sounds like science fiction, like the plot of a Hollywood blockbuster. And you'd be right to be skeptical if this were an isolated incident, if there weren't decades of evidence suggesting that world governments know something about Antarctica that they're desperately trying to keep from the rest of us. If not for what happened next, when Nazis went south, Operation New Swabia. The year is 1938. Europe stands on the brink of war. Nazi Germany, obsessed with technological supremacy, ancient mysticism, and Lebensraum, living space, is expanding in every direction. Then they turn their gaze south, to the last unclaimed territory on Earth. What I'm about to tell you isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented historical fact. In December 1938, The German research vessel Schwabenland departs from Hamburg. But this is no ordinary scientific ship. It's a floating military base equipped with catapults capable of launching 10-ton seaplanes directly from its deck, technology far ahead of its time. The mission is called Operation New Swabia. The official explanation? Securing whaling operations for margarine production. Let that sink in. Nazi Germany, 1 year before invading Poland and triggering World War II, supposedly sends one of its most advanced vessels to the most hostile environment on Earth for margarine, for whale fat to spread on bread. Does that make any sense to you? Of course it doesn't. The Schwabenland arrives in Antarctica in January 1939. For the next several weeks, Luftwaffe pilots conduct 15 flights over a region of East Antarctica that Germany claims and renames Neuschwabenland, New Swabia. They photograph over 600,000 square kilometers of previously uncharted territory. They drop thousands of metal pennants emblazoned with swastikas, claiming the land for the Third Reich. But here's what the official reports tried to bury. They found something that shouldn't exist. In the heart of this frozen hell, they discovered the Schirmacher Oasis. 35 square kilometers of ice-free land, dozens of freshwater lakes, exposed rock and soil, and temperatures 10 to 15 degrees Celsius warmer than the surrounding frozen wasteland. In Antarctica, an oasis. Captain Alfred Richer, the expedition's commander, sends an encrypted message back to Berlin. Mission accomplished. But what was the real mission? After Germany's defeat in 1945, rumors begin to circulate. Whispers of Base 211, of secret underground facilities built into warm caves beneath the Schirmacher Oasis, of elite SS units and advanced technology being evacuated there by submarine as the Third Reich crumbled. Crazy talk, right? The desperate fantasies of Nazi sympathizers who couldn't accept defeat? Except for one problem. In July and August 1945, more than 2 months after Germany's unconditional surrender, 2 German submarines surface at the Argentine port of Mar del Plata and surrender to Allied authorities. U-530 and U-977. These aren't ordinary U-boats. These are Type 21 submarines, the most technologically advanced underwater vessels in the world at that time. They can remain submerged for weeks. They can travel thousands of kilometers without surfacing. Perfect for secret missions. Their captains claim they were just patrolling, just following orders, just trying to survive. But their logbooks are missing. Their stories don't add up. And under interrogation, the crews give contradictory accounts of their movements during those missing months. Persistent rumors claim these submarines dropped someone or something off along the Antarctic coast before surrendering. The Allied intelligence agencies don't dismiss these rumors. They investigate them, and what they discover makes them do something unprecedented. It's 1946. World War II has been over for barely a year. The United States is demobilizing. Millions of soldiers are coming home. The nation is exhausted, traumatized, desperate for peace. And yet, the U.S. Navy suddenly assembles the largest armada ever sent to Antarctica. Not a scientific expedition, a military invasion force. Operation High Jump. Task Force 68. Let me describe what they sent to this uninhabited frozen wasteland. 13 ships, including an aircraft carrier, seaplane tender, submarines, destroyers, cargo vessels, and tankers. 4,700 personnel, dozens of aircraft, enough firepower to invade a small country. At the head of this force is Admiral Richard E. Byrd, America's most celebrated polar explorer, the first man to fly over both the North and South Poles, a national hero. The official explanation for this massive operation? Cold weather training, equipment testing in extreme conditions. Think about that for a second. Why would you send an aircraft carrier, thousands of combat-ready troops, and enough supplies for a 6-month campaign to test equipment? Why would you deploy this force to the most remote location on Earth when you have Alaska, Greenland, and Canada available for cold weather training? And here's the most damning detail. The mission was planned to last 6 to 8 months, through the Antarctic summer and fall. Instead, it was aborted after just 8 weeks. Aborted in what can only be described as panic. The official casualty report lists 1 aircraft lost due to weather, 3 crew members killed, several others injured during rescue operations. That's the official story. But classified reports, some of which have leaked over the decades, tell a very different tale. Reports of aerial encounters, of equipment malfunctions that couldn't be explained, of aircraft losses that don't appear in public records, of Byrd losing not 3 men, but dozens. The most shocking revelation comes from Byrd himself. On March 5, 1947, immediately after returning to Chile, Admiral Byrd gives an interview to the Chilean newspaper El Mercurio. His words are recorded, published, and then desperately suppressed by U.S. military authorities. Byrd states, and I'm quoting directly, "It is necessary for the United States to take defensive actions against enemy air fighters which come from the polar regions. In the case of a new war, the continental United States will be attacked by fighters that are able to fly from one pole to the other with incredible speed." Read that again. Enemy air fighters from the polar regions, capable of flying from pole to pole at incredible speed. Who was he talking about? The Nazis were defeated. Germany was occupied rubble. Japan had surrendered. There were no enemy fighters anywhere in 1947, let alone at the South Pole, unless there were. Byrd is immediately recalled to Washington and subjected to a closed-door congressional debriefing. The transcripts of that hearing remain classified to this day. 78 years later, we still can't know what America's greatest polar explorer told Congress about what he encountered in Antarctica. But we know what happened next. Absolute silence. For 10 years, Antarctica disappears from public discussion. The U.S. Navy doesn't return. No major expeditions are announced. It's as if the entire continent has been forgotten. But it hasn't been forgotten. It's being watched, studied, feared. And in 1957, something changes. The treaty that makes no sense. Enemies become partners. Picture the world in 1957. The Cold War is at its peak. The United States and Soviet Union are locked in an existential struggle for global dominance. They've divided Europe with barbed wire and minefields. They're racing to build bigger bombs, faster missiles, more terrifying weapons. They're fighting proxy wars in Korea, preparing for confrontation in Vietnam, Cuba, Berlin. These two superpowers can't agree on anything. They can barely speak to each other without threats of nuclear annihilation. And then suddenly they agree to cooperate in Antarctica. The International Geophysical Year is announced, supposedly a global scientific initiative focused on understanding Earth's physical properties. Noble, peaceful, apolitical. But look at what actually happens. Both superpowers rush to build bases in Antarctica, not near the coast where research would be easier, not in accessible areas. They race for the most remote, most hostile locations on the continent. The Americans build Amundsen-Scott Station directly at the geographic South Pole, the most logistically challenging location imaginable. The Soviets build Vostok Station in East Antarctica and another at the Pole of Inaccessibility, the point on the continent farthest from any coastline. Why? What scientific value justifies the extraordinary cost and danger of maintaining permanent bases in places where temperatures drop to minus 80 degrees Celsius? Where a single supply mistake means certain death. In 1958, a Soviet expedition reaches the Pole of Inaccessibility. They build a small research station. They stay exactly 12 days. Then they evacuate. In a rush. They leave everything behind. Equipment, supplies, even a bust of Lenin, facing Moscow, still standing there today, buried under decades of snow. What did they see that made them flee? We don't know. The Soviet reports were classified. Some remain so to this day. But here's what we do know. Whatever both superpowers discovered during the International Geophysical Year terrified them enough to do the impossible. On December 1st, 1959, at the height of the Cold War, 12 nations, including the United States and Soviet Union, signed the Antarctic Treaty. Let me explain why this is completely unprecedented. These nations are ready to destroy each other. They're building nuclear arsenals capable of ending civilization. They're spying on each other, sabotaging each other, threatening each other with extinction. And yet they agree, unanimously, to completely demilitarize an entire continent. Article 1. Antarctica shall be used for peaceful purposes only. All military bases, weapons testing, and maneuvers are permanently prohibited. Article 4. All territorial claims are frozen. No new claims may be made. Existing claims cannot be enforced or disputed. Think about that. An entire continent, larger than Europe, potentially filled with untapped resources, is taken off the table. Removed from the game of nations. Locked away. Why? Article 5 is even stranger. Nuclear explosions and disposal of radioactive waste are specifically forbidden. Why would you need to specifically forbid nuclear explosions? Unless someone had suggested using them. Unless someone had proposed detonating nuclear weapons in Antarctica, perhaps to melt through the ice, or to sterilize something, or to destroy something buried deep below. But the most revealing clause is Article 7. Any member nation can inspect any facility in Antarctica at any time, without notice or restriction. This isn't trust. This is mutual paranoia codified into international law. The Antarctic Treaty isn't a cooperation agreement, it's a containment protocol. They're not protecting Antarctica from us. They're protecting us from Antarctica, the forbidden zones, where you absolutely cannot go. Today, tourism companies will tell you Antarctica is open, that anyone with enough money can visit the last continent. That's a carefully constructed illusion. Yes, tourists can visit Antarctica, along precisely controlled routes on the Antarctic Peninsula, the most accessible part of the continent. You can see penguins, photograph glaciers, step onto the ice for carefully supervised hours. One step off the designated path? Forbidden. Want to explore inland? Denied. Try to access the interior without government authorization? You'll be arrested, fined, and permanently banned. But even government-backed scientific expeditions can't go everywhere. The Antarctic Treaty established what are called Antarctic Specially Protected Areas, ASPAs. To enter these zones requires written permission from every single treaty signatory nation, effectively impossible to obtain. And which areas are protected? ASPA Zone 111, the Schermacher Oasis, the warm ice-free region discovered by the Nazis in 1938, completely closed. ASPA Zone 101, Taylor Valley, home of Blood Falls. Have you heard of Blood Falls? A 5-story waterfall of blood-red water flowing from Taylor Glacier. When it was first photographed, scientists assumed it was algae. Red algae staining the ice. They were wrong. It's iron. Iron-rich water from a subglacial lake that has been sealed off from the surface for at least 2 million years. Cut off from sunlight, from the atmosphere, from the outside world. And it's alive. Samples from blood falls revealed microorganisms that have evolved in complete isolation. Life that survives in conditions we thought impossible. No light, no oxygen, extreme cold, water so salty it doesn't freeze even at minus 13 degrees Celsius. Blood falls proved something terrifying. Antarctica isn't dead. Beneath the ice exists an entire hidden ecosystem. A network of lakes, rivers, and possibly even seas, isolated from Earth's surface for millions of years. And we have no idea what's down there. The pyramids that aren't supposed to exist. In 2012, satellite imagery available on Google Earth revealed something that shouldn't be there. Pyramids. 3 perfectly pyramid-shaped mountains in the Ellsworth mountain range. One of them bears an uncanny resemblance to the Great Pyramid of Giza, except it's twice the size. Geologists rush to explain them away. Natural formations, nunataks shaped by wind erosion, perfectly normal geological processes. Maybe they're right, but the angles are too precise, the symmetry too perfect, the proportions too deliberate. I'm not saying humans built them. Our recorded history doesn't go back far enough. No known civilization had the capability. But what if erosion didn't create these shapes? What if erosion simply exposed them? What if they were built before the ice? Antarctica wasn't always frozen. 15 million years ago, it had forests, rivers, possibly even ancient ecosystems we can't imagine. What if something existed there before the ice came? Something that built. Something that left monuments. And what if those monuments are finally being uncovered as the ice melts? Lake Vostok, the abyss that stares back. 4 kilometers beneath Vostok Station, Russian scientists discovered something impossible. A liquid freshwater lake. Vast. Pristine. Completely sealed off from the outside world for at least 15 million years. Lake Vostok is enormous, roughly the size of Lake Ontario. But it's not frozen. Despite being beneath 4 kilometers of ice, despite temperatures that should freeze any water solid, Lake Vostok remains liquid. How? Geothermal heat from below, pressure from the ice above, or something else we don't understand. For decades, Russian scientists drilled down toward the lake, slowly, carefully, using techniques designed to avoid contamination. In February 2012, they broke through. Water samples were collected. DNA analysis revealed thousands of unknown genetic sequences, organisms that had evolved in complete darkness, in crushing pressure, in an environment completely isolated from Earth's biosphere. Then something happened. The program was shut down. Funding disappeared. The drill site was sealed. Information stopped flowing. Officially, the project was suspended to prevent contaminating the pristine ecosystem. But what if contamination wasn't the concern? What if the concern was what contamination might flow upward? What if they found something in Lake Vostok that should have stayed buried? There are over 400 known subglacial lakes beneath Antarctica's ice. Vostok is just the largest. They're all connected, a vast hidden hydraulic system flowing beneath the continent. We've barely scratched the surface of one lake. What's in the others? If you think all of this is ancient history, you're wrong. The most disturbing evidence is happening right now. In 2016 and again in 2018, NASA's Antarctic Impulsive Transient Antenna, ANITA, detected something that should be impossible. Neutrinos. Now, neutrinos are everywhere. They're tiny particles that pass through matter almost without interacting. Billions pass through your body every second from the sun, from cosmic rays, from the universe. But these neutrinos were different. They were coming from below, from inside the Earth, from Antarctica itself. According to our understanding of physics, this is impossible. Neutrinos don't originate from below ground. They come from space, from nuclear reactions in stars. Yet ANITA detected them, multiple times. From below the Antarctic ice, scientists scrambled for explanations, detector errors, statistical anomalies, reflections of cosmic rays. But the detections kept coming. What if there's a source beneath the ice? A powerful, active, unknown source generating high-energy particles that shouldn't exist. What if it's in Wilkes Land? The 320-kilometer mascon detected by GRACE. The perfectly circular metallic mass buried for 250 million years. What if it's not dormant? What if it's waking up? Why they can't hide it much longer? The Antarctic Treaty was designed to last 50 years. It's been renewed, extended, reinforced. But it was never designed to withstand climate change. The ice is melting, faster than predicted, faster than models suggested possible. Glaciers that stood for millions of years are collapsing into the sea. Ice shelves the size of countries are breaking apart. The coastline is retreating, and the secrets are emerging. Every summer, more ice disappears. More ancient surfaces are exposed. More anomalies are detected. The treaty can control human access. It cannot control the planet. What happens when the ice over Wilkes Land melts enough for commercial satellites to map what's underneath? What happens when private expeditions, funded by billionaires who don't care about treaties, reach the forbidden zones? What happens when someone finds what made Admiral Byrd flee? What terrified the Soviets at the pole of inaccessibility? What caused the Antarctic Treaty to lock down an entire continent? The curtain is falling. And here's the final, terrifying thought. What if someone already knows? What if the recent surge in military activity around Antarctica, the sudden interest from China, Russia, the United States building new bases, isn't about science or climate research? What if it's about preparation? What if they know something is about to be revealed and they're positioning themselves to control it? The question we need to ask. So here we are. Antarctica, the frozen archive, the quarantined continent, the last place on Earth we're not allowed to truly explore. Not because it's pristine, not because we're protecting penguins, but because beneath 3 kilometers of ice lies something that forced the most powerful, most paranoid nations on Earth to sit at the same table and agree to lock it away. The Wilkes landmass, the perfectly circular 320-kilometer mass concentration. The object, if that's what it is, that's been buried for 250 million years. The Nazi discoveries in Schermacher Oasis. The reason Operation High Jump was aborted. The encounters Admiral Byrd couldn't explain. The subglacial lakes teeming with unknown life. The pyramids emerging from the ice. The neutrinos coming from below. The Antarctic Treaty wasn't written to protect science. It was written as a containment protocol. Antarctica isn't a nature reserve. It's Pandora's box. And the ice that's kept it sealed for millions of years is melting. So here's the question you need to ask yourself. When that box finally opens, and it will open, whether we're ready or not, what comes out? What will we find beneath the ice? And more importantly, what has already found us? The secret of Antarctica isn't about the past. It's about what's coming. If this investigation opened your eyes to what's really happening in Antarctica, hit that like button and subscribe. Because what we've uncovered today is just the beginning. The ice is melting. The truth is emerging. And you'll want to be here when it breaks through. The real question isn't why we're not allowed to explore Antarctica. The real question is, are we ready for what happens when we can no longer avoid it?